Now, who hasn't heard of a deer sanctuary? You know, what is a deer sanctuary to you? And what is a deer sanctuary on your land? Unfortunately, when I go to clients, I get to see what a lot of deer sanctuaries are, or what they're referred to as deer sanctuaries. And what I mean is, someone has 80 acres, but this 20 acres over here, they never walk through, and they never spook deer, and they never go in during the hunting season. But really, it's not a sanctuary unless your sight, your sound, and your scent doesn't get into that sanctuary. So if you have a 20-acre sanctuary out of 80 acres and you drive by it, you allow your scent to go into it, and deer can hear you in that sanctuary, it's not a sanctuary. Everyone thinks of deer bedding areas as sanctuaries. That's the last thing you need to think about. When you look at a daily life of a deer, they're living in a bedding area, they're transitioning in between, and then they're hitting a major food source in the afternoon. I call those holding plots because they hold deer until dark, releasing them to an evening destination. That might be your neighbor's bait pile on public land, maybe your neighbor's food plots that are overpressured, maybe a distant hardwoods that's full of acorns, white oak the end of September, red oak during October, November. Maybe it's a golf course, a subdivision, whatever it might be, but it's a place, a destination where deer go after dark. I don't like the term destination food plot because people put a lot of variety in that food plot. It's big, they overhunt it, and it spooks the deer off their entire parcel. Again, what is a sanctuary? We have those deer bedding areas. Again, we have those transitions in between, and we have those food sources. All three should be included in your sanctuary. Does it make sense? Your bedding areas are the last step when it comes to maintaining sanctuary on your property. And I'm going to show you why. We're going to talk about, let's go inside this food plot over here and take a look. This is wide open right here. You can see the redneck right behind me. It's a lot more hidden than a lot of rednecks and deer blinds that I see on client lands and as I tour around the country. But even then, this isn't hidden enough. And that relates to the sanctuary that I'm going to talk about, and what the number one sanctuary is to have on your land. And it's critical for you to have on your private land, let alone finding a corner of public land where you can hang your hat on and predict that you're going to shoot a giant buck every single fall. Let's go ahead and take a look at this food plot, and I'll further explain why this is so critical. Now, we talk about sanctuaries. Here's a small hunting plot. In fact, we shot 2 deer off this last year. Diane shot a buck with her bow and one with their shotgun out of the redneck right back there. You see, the redneck is completely hidden. When you come over on this angle right here and you look up, you can't see the redneck. It's hard for us to see the redneck, let alone deer. We treat every one of our food plots, and you should too. And if you don't, I'm just warning you right now, you're not going to experience success. But we treat all of our rednecks, all of our blinds, all of our food plots on those blinds as if it's a sanctuary. I hope it makes sense that you're inviting all the deer into your food plots, whether it's small like this one or large like some of our other ones that are over 2 acres in size. But if you invite deer to this food plot and you spook them away, then you're not going to fill up those travel corridors that lead to this area, and you're not going to fill up those bedding areas. So people worry about sanctuaries back in a bedding area, but if you don't have deer coming to daylight to your food plots on your private parcel, or if you don't have deer hitting those hidden clear cuts or mass crop out on public land, if you don't have them hitting this during the daylight, this food source, then those bedding areas that you're trying to hunt are not going to be there. The greatest way to spook out a bedding area is not to go into that bedding area. It's to destroy the food source that's relating to the movement that complements and supports that bedding area. Never look at it the other way around, that bedding area and great deer habitat, thick cover, side cover, stem count regeneration supports the food plot. It's the other way around. The food plot is what supports deer being there in the first place. I go to a lot of properties that are several hundred acres, and you might have 200 acres that's a quarter mile away or more from a quality food plot. And what happens, that 200 acres is not full of rubs, it's not full of scrapes, because deer want to relate to that afternoon food source. Again, they feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. If they have great browse back in their bedding area, you need that. That's a good thing. I'm not saying that's bad. But the deer aren't going to be there for the browse alone. They're there because they're relating to that afternoon food source. They want to feed about an hour before dark every single day. Those mature bucks might show up at dark, but rest assured, they're close to dark. If those mature bucks are showing up on your land in the middle of the night, it's because they've traveled from a mile away or more. It takes them a long time to get there. So these food plots right here are critical, that they're a part of your sanctuary. This is what supports the travel, obviously, to this food source. and supports that bedding area, not the other way around. Do you truly have a sanctuary on your land? What I find is, as far as being an efficient parcel, every parcel should have at least 50% of your land, and it should be contiguous. It should all be together, unless you have several hundred acres or more, and you can actually separate your land apart. But every property should have a large percentage of land, at least 50%, that's that core area. That core area is your true sanctuary on the land. That should include your bedding areas, your travel corridors, your water holes, your mock scrapes, and of course, number one, in the number one sanctuary that you could have, these food sources should be included in your sanctuary. That should all be together. Your stand location should be up to the edge of that. But when you climb up and down that stand location or blind location, like this redneck back here, you have to make sure that you can get in and out of that redneck without spooking deer. You see the redneck right out here, it's in a hole. We never had any deer look up at that redneck last year, so kind of take note of this. The 2 deer that were shot here were less than 30 yards. We have switchgrass that's growing right here. Switchgrass is growing along this line. We're just gonna have about 3 feet of switchgrass as it relates to blocking our movement getting into the redneck. We have a big bank of switchgrass on the outside. And you know, I get distracted by sheds while we're out here filming, but I also get distracted by giant blackberries that I'm gonna try to eat here before Dylan gets them when we're done. Or Dylan, if you wanna grab a couple. Here, Dylan, you can have these. I don't mind.
When's the last time you washed your hands?
They're full of chemicals, they gotta be clean. We just sprayed a lot this morning, but berries get me every time, so I can't wait to eat these berries. But bottom line is, a true sanctuary is something that every parcel needs. It's something that I hunt on public land. If I know that people are walking through an area, I don't care how much sign is there, how many scrapes are there, how great the habitat looks. But if people are walking through there, I have to walk through it to turn around and hunt it. I'm not gonna hunt there. I'm not gonna hunt private land like that. I'm not gonna set up my own land. I'm not gonna set up client lands like that. Think of it again. I want to repeat this because it's so important. If you're spooking out the deer in your food plots or your food sources on public land, then those bedding areas you're trying to hunt and stick a great morning stand in is not going to be there. And that leads me to the last point. Food plots, travel to, bedding areas. When you have each one of those defined, guess what it does for you? It gives you a stand assemblage. We're not hunting this stand in the morning. Now we might slip through the open fields, get into this post daybreak, half hour after daybreak, so that we can see the fields are cleared. We're getting in here to a deer movement of bucks that might be cruising through here during the daylight hours in the morning. But other than that, this is a great evening stand. Both bucks were killed during the evening last year. And then because we haven't destroyed this movement, because the travel corridors back and forth from this food source to the next food source to the big food sources around here are free and clean of hunting pressure, then that creates morning stands back behind the bedding areas because the deer are actually using those bedding areas because we haven't spooked out the food sources. Think of it as an entire system. Not only should you have a sanctuary and majority of your land, the efficiency of your parcel relies on it. You know, if I have 100 acres, I want to make sure that 70 acres at all times is in that sanctuary, again, including everything except my stand locations and access. You want that core area there. But at the same time, it sets a stand assemblage so that you can have highly defined morning and evening stand locations. What I find a lot of problems I go to properties is they don't know where a morning stand is and where an evening stand is. And maybe you're watching this and that's, you know, understandable. A lot of people deal with that frustration, but it's because you probably don't have highly defined daylight food sources, which sets up daylight bedding areas. If deer are coming into your food plots in the middle of the night, it's not doing anyone any good, even the deer, because you're just spooking them back. That means it's a nocturnal property. I see that all the time. And when you have that nocturnal condition established on those food plots, you don't have deer living in those bedding areas. Your stand locations, all your hard work. A lot of folks start with bedding areas, working on bedding areas. But again, like we did last year, we started with food sources, food plots, access, switchgrass screening that we could establish for this year. Our stand locations, mock scrapes, and trail cam locations. That's where we started in year one. I urge you to do the same. Sometimes it's good to get back to the drawing board. And then you add bedding areas, travel corridors that complement those food sources and that daylight movement. You're just trying to enhance it at that point. What is a true sanctuary? It should include everything: bedding areas, travel corridors, food sources. But the number one sanctuary to have on your property is your food plot or food source on public land, because if those are secure, so will your bedding areas. You start that stand assemblage with everything, including your sanctuaries. And the cool thing is, if you go back into a bedding area and you spook a buck that's relating to a major food source every single day, you know what I find is he just shifts over because he wants to be in that food source that he feels safe in for that last hour before dark, or half hour, or 10 minutes, or right around dark. Something he can establish a daily pattern with. He wants that, he craves that. He doesn't get it very often. You be the one to give him that. And if you end up spooking him out of his bedding area, he'll probably shift over. He'll still hit that afternoon food source. And that's why your number one sanctuary that you can have on your land this fall are your food sources, and then everything else successfully falls in line for a great hunt and a great ability to be the actual true herd influencer this fall. Well, I'm real excited, folks. I appreciate you watching this video, but my next web class, How to Plant Food Plots, How to Design Your Food Plot Program, is out. And it really goes through a step-by-step process for not only how to plant your food plots, but why you should plant them, where you should plant them, what you should plant, how you should create them. There's a lot of different modules. Ends up about 30 videos altogether. I urge you to check that out. We're out here completing our food plot work today, and we do that in a pretty strict pattern so we can find success this fall. Food plots shouldn't be a guessing game. Take the guesswork out of food plots and food plots planting, and check out the web classes. I have my How to Design Your Whitetail Property, the food plots for the next web class in the series. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you check it out, and let me know what you think if you end up purchasing that, and I think you'd be well pleased that you did.